Welcome everyone to lecture 4. So in this lecture today we're gonna discuss about something very important for programming. We call it function. So in this topic today we focus on function. So before we discuss about function, so we need to talk about something very important concept to understand function. We call it abstraction idea. So how can we understand about abstraction? For example, I give you example about projector. So all of you know how to use a projector. Yeah, that's it. And but we know how to use projector, but we don't know how a projector work. Yeah. Or for example, all of you have a smartphone. You can have iPhone, Samsung Galaxy or something like that. You know how to use smartphone, but you don't know how a smartphone work. Yeah, so you don't know how a smartphone can make a phone call, how they can help you to capture a picture. You don't know, but you know how you can use it. Yeah, so we call that abstraction idea. Another idea that's very important, we call it decomposition. So for example, here you want to use projector to project a very large image, and the large image is combined from multiple smaller image one. So you have a small image region here. So for a small image region, you want to use a projector to project image for this region, and you have another projector for another region image. So when you combine multiple projector together, you can have a very large image. We call it decomposition. So it means that different device, different component are working together to achieve a goal. So we call that decomposition idea. So how can we apply those idea to programming? So how can we do that? So in programming language or in programming thinking, we have some technique, some concepts to implement the decomposition and abstraction idea to your course. So we have two ways. The first is a function, and the second is class. So today we only focus on function, and you will learn about class in next video. Yeah, you will learn it later, so don't worry. Okay, so we talk about function. So function have something we call abstraction. Why we say that? Because in a function, if you have function, so you already know what is a function. For example, if you have function fh equal is this one, you know that if you give an input h equal to 2, it comes to fh, and you have an output is 4. So similar to that, if you have function Python function here, so you provide input and the Python function will provide you output. So we call this input. Yeah. So you don't need to know how the function work in detail for using the function. So you can know how to use a function without understanding how a function work. So that's the abstraction idea. Okay, this is very important concept for function. So it means that you can think a function as a black box and just use the black box. Yeah. Okay. And how can we define a function? So if you want to define a function in Python, you have at least 4 ingredients. So first thing, we have a name. Function should have a name. The next thing, function should have a parameter here. So that's the input of the function. And next thing, function has have a body. And final thing, function have a returns. So you can have a return or not. So we will talk about return later. Okay. So that's the syntax for Python function. So the first thing you need def is a keyword, Python keyword. You should have it. You must have it. The next thing you should have a name, function name. So you can provide any names for the function, whatever you want. That's okay. But usually function start with a verb. Yeah. A verb here. Not now. Usually we use verb for function. Okay. And next thing we need to have a parameter, or we say that is a parameter here. Or arguments. Yeah. We call it parameters or argument. And that means we need to have a body, a function body here. And in function body, you can have a return statement. Yeah. A function is optional, can have a doctrine. It's for description, describe how function work. Yeah. And finally here is a main function. Main function of your program. So we call it main function. It's for, we call it entry point of the program. So it's an entry point. So it means that when you run your Python file, they will execute this function before anything. Yeah. So that's reason why we call it main function. So that's the so we have a return here. The return statement is very important. So we will discuss about return later, more in detail. Okay. Okay. So as I mentioned you, this is a parameter argument, but when you define the function, it's not a real parameter. It's not a real variable. It's a formal parameter. And when you call a function, it becomes an actual parameter. So when you call the function f here, the s value become a real variable because you will know later. Okay? So here we call it main program. The next thing we need to discuss about variable scope. It's very important for function. So if you want to understand function, you should know variable scope. Okay, so what is variable scope? So as I mentioned before, it is a function, your function, and it's a main function. It's a main function. So main function will have a scope. We call it global scope. Yeah, and in function f here we have f scope. Okay, so it is global scope. So what does it mean? When in global scope, the function f will have a memory to store the definition of function f, but the variable of function f do not have a memory yet. Okay, so when you have a variable here, variable h, so variable h have a value number 3. It is value 3 in the memory here. And we have function z here. Function z. Sorry, we have variable z. variable z is stored value of function f. So at this line, you invoke a function f, or it means you call function f. So when you call function f, the scope for function f will be created. So it means that they provide a memory for function f can work. It really work. So they work in real. Okay. So when the function f scope have a memory, they will create a memory for form of variable. So now form of variable become real variable. It become real variable. Yeah. So after they create real variable, they will do that. They will execute the expression inside function body. Yeah. They increasing the value of h equal to 3. Yeah. And then what? The value will become 4. Yeah, you see that? After they increasing, they will do what? They will execute return. So they will execute return. So when they execute return, what happened? It means that they will transfer the value of h variable the value of variable h to z here in the global scope. And after they execute the return, they will destroy the f scope memory. So we don't have a f scope memory here. We just have global scope. Yeah. So one thing you should focus on that. So at the time t0, you only have a global scope. You don't have the f scope yet. So when you call the function f here in this line, they will create the f scope. So it means it's t1. So at the first time you stay there. And after you call the function, actually you move to the f scope. It means that you not stay in global scope. You are already transferred to f scope. So we call it switching. And this usually takes time. Very long time. Yeah. So keep in mind that it's very important. Okay. So and one warning about return statement. If in Python, if you don't have a return in the function body, it means that Python will return none. Yeah, they automatically by default return none if you don't have any return statement. So keep in mind that it's very important. Okay, and the next thing we need to discuss the default parameter. So what is default parameter? We have a default parameter here. Okay, so sorry, I'm so sorry. It's not a default parameter. We have a default parameter here. So when you call this function, when we call this function, we don't have a parameter here. Not transfer. Not transfer parameters. So if you don't mention a parameter, the function will try to use in the default parameter. So it means that in this case, the default parameter equal to 3. So when you execute this line, this code, it will return value 5 because the default parameter is 3. 3 plus 2 is equal to 5. Yeah. Okay. So next thing we need to discuss is return and print. So to really explain about that thing, I will show you example. Okay, I will show you example here. So for example, if you have a variable h equal to 3 and you define a function f h return h plus 2. So when you execute the function here, we try to print f h, so you will get 5. Okay, but in another case you have another choice. You have a 3 here, so you have f h, so you try to print f plus 2. So they also print to the console, your console, the value 5. So both of them will provide you the same result. They print the console value 5, but which one is better? So what do you think? Which one is better? Okay, I hope you already have your own choice. I will tell you that you should use return in this method, because when you use return, you can reuse your code for another purpose. You can reuse your function for different situation. If you just use ring here, you only can use this function for this situation. You cannot reuse your code for different case. Okay, so I recommend that you should use return instead of print statement. Okay, next hence we need to talk about function argument. So when you input a function, when you give arguments or parameter to a function, you can give nothing. You can give an integer, a number, or you can give a function as an argument for another function. Yeah. So for example, here you can provide a function with no parameter, no input, so and no return statement here. So as I mentioned before, when you have a global scope here, they also when you call a function a, they will create a function a scope and try to execute the body function. Okay, the function body, and after they execute the body function, they will execute the return. If you don't have a return statement, they will return none. Yeah. And next thing, if you this slide, if you try to call, number 2. At this slide, when you try to call function b with integer number, similarly, they will create a function b a scope and try to execute the function body. And after they do function body, they will execute the return. Oh, I'm sorry, you should have a part of this here. Okay, I made some wrong here. Okay, so I say again, when they finish function body, they will do return, and in the return they will return the value number 3, number 2 here, yeah, and in here you will do 5 plus 2. Yeah, that's it. And next thing we gonna to do, we provide argument to a function c, and argument of function c is a function, is not a function a. So similarly, you see that in function c you have parameter, is a function now, and in the function body of function c you try to execute function z is actually a function a. So you see that they will provide a scope of function c, and because in the function c you try to call the function a, So they will execute a function A. Create a function A scope, execute function A, return to function C, and prompt function Z to return to global scope here. Okay, you see that? And after they done everything, they will destroy the memory for function C scope and also function A scope. Yeah. So another situation about scope can happen to you. For example, in this case here, you try to get a value h here. You see that? So the scope of this variable h is here. They belong to f scope. So you should be careful that even though h in the f scope and s in global scope, they have the same name, but they are actually totally different variable. Yeah, it's similar to situation that you have two people with the same name, but they are living in different country. So one guy living in Korean and one guy living in USA, even though they have the same name, but they are totally different people. So when some guy do something, it not impact to the other guy. So keep in mind that, yeah, same name but different people living in different country. Okay. And next thing here, you see that they have a variable h here and they call a function z. You see that? And in function z, you have a form of the parameter e. So inside the function z body, they try to accept the value of a variable h. So because in the z scope, we didn't define variable h yet. So they will try to look at a global scope. You see that? And try to run here. So read it here. So it's still 5. Okay. So it's 5 because the value come from the global scope h. And they will run 6. Yeah. And another case, we similar to the second case, but in here we try to modify the value of h. So s equal to s plus 1. We have a assignment operator here. We try to assign a value back to h, but this one will give you error. You cannot do that because h is immutable variable. So we need to use global parameter keyword for this case, but it's not a good way. So yeah, I don't mention about this here. So you should not zoom into this case. This case and this case, it's okay, it's good. This case is the best one, but this case is not a good case. Okay, do not try to zoom into this case in detail. Yeah, the next thing I want to mention is inline function. So what is inline function? So function with depth, we call this outline function. Because when, as I mentioned before, you have a global scope. It's a global scope.
I have results from multiple sports.
So when you call a function f, what do? They will create a f scope. So you have global scope and at the beginning you stay there. But when you call a function f, they create f scope and you have to transfer to the f scope for some moment. So we call it switch. So we call it outline function. So here we talk about inline function. So it means that if you have an inline function, so at the beginning you in global scope, and if you call inline function f, So inline function is opposite to the outline function. It don't do switch, don't do transfer scope. They still keep inside global scope. So it means that you can save in time for switching function. Yeah. So which case we need to use inline function. So if you have a function that have a just single expression and the time to execute single expression is faster than the transfer scope. So what we need to do, you should use inline function. So I give you example here. You have two options. The first one, just create a depth function we call h and provide argument a, b, and c and try to return a plus b plus c. Or you can use inline function with the keyword lambda. That's the way we define inline function. So if you have here and you have in global scope, you have a equal to 1, b equal to 2, and c equal to 3, and you try to call the function s here, a, b, and c. So you see that you have two different functions for this one. They need to create the function scope and transfer to the function s scope for execute the function body. So, but you see that you only have one expression. So the time for execute the function body is faster than transfer function. So in this case, you should use lambda function because you are waste time for transfer function. Yeah. So I hope that you get that idea. So it's enough for the concept and theorem today. So I hope to see you in the next video. Okay. Bye.